For your patience. You can all read. That's me. That's my organisation. We have a stand over there. We make creative e-learning. We resell to Tara, and we lose the screen. It comes back again. What I'm talking about today is gestures. It's about touch. It's about how we design effective mobile learning based on user experience design. So if you want to know much more about touching things, you're in the right place today. So I based this talk on a bit of research I've done over the last few months. It feels like years. I was looking for that light bulb moment, something that was going to inspire me about what makes mobile learning different. And it quickly came to me that touch really does change everything we do. Because what we do now, we actually interact with the content. You know, historically, we've clicked buttons, we've clicked next, we've clicked back, we've clicked menu, and these are really quite abstract activities that then change something else. So cue prop, to pick a metaphor, we turn a light bulb on by flicking a switch on the wall. I mean, how abstract is that? But now what we do, we touch the light bulb and it turns on. Now, my script says the audience should gasp with amazement there, but clearly I need to change my magic. Touch changes everything, really. That's the message I want you to think about. So then I thought again about, what if touch is all we've ever grown up with? What if as a digital native, all we've ever known is an iPad? What would a magazine feel like to us? Let's sort of turn things around completely. I found this really nice clip of a 1-year-old who's only ever known an iPad. I think that's really nice. It just shows how you can recode your internal operating system. I'm not sure quite what pinching at a woman's magazine is supposed to actually initiate, but we'll leave that one. User experience design. This is what we're talking about. This is Don Norman, cognitive researcher in the US who first conceived user experience. And it's everything. It's not just the technology, it's the medium and the message. It's satisfaction with using a product, a service, a system. Anything that you experience can be designed in a way that is pleasant to use. A good user experience, and when you think of a typical experience, it's always a game, it's a fun ride at the arcade or whatever. It can be big, it can be completely immersive, it can be a great film. This is what we normally think of. But it's the little stuff. Personally, I love the calendar on the iPad. You know, the way that you use your finger to turn the pages and you can pull them across, you can see the text showing through underneath, upside down. It's just a real joy to use. So we shouldn't ignore the fact that experience is everything. It's not just the big picture, it's the little stuff that matters as well. Sorry about that. But bad experiences stay with us. We have a bad meal, we don't go back. We see a bad film, we tell our friends who probably don't go and see it in the first place. These things matter. It does matter. Even the little stuff which doesn't work as we expect it, it leaves that impression of us, and we start to degrade that as an experience. So it just shows how important it is to get it right. If you want to know more about user experience design, then I'm not proud of it, but I actually did a rap on the subject. There's a link to this presentation at the end as well. That's a code to go and watch it. Like I say, it's not very pretty, but there's a lot more detail on the subject there. Because I'm going to take it forward now and look at other industries, about evidence as to why this does matter. So I picked 3 examples here of big organisations which have proved that UXD really makes a significant difference to their business. Crocs, those people with their funny little shoes, they didn't have a responsive website. Users were seeing like a scaled down version of their website on mobile devices. They introduced a responsive version for mobile. Their click-throughs increased immediately by nearly 8%. Another organisation, Career Builder, huge website for job submissions and applications. They did the same thing. I think they've got a higher throughput. The number of click-throughs went up by 20%. And this is just a responsive site. This is a site that's just formatted pleasingly for a specific device. The final one, probably one that's maybe more familiar, emails. I mean, we'll probably all subscribe to certain organisations which send us intermittent newsletters and offers to buy things cheaply. What percentage of users will delete an email that doesn't display correctly on a mobile device? 42%. I mean, does that ring true? I mean, if you receive something in your inbox and it's just not, it just doesn't look nice, you just think, I'm not really interested in that, get rid of it. But there's one that's got more of a graphical treatment that's obviously been designed. You maybe could take time to scroll down and maybe click through. So, well, yes, it's a different industry, but the same principles apply. Another principle that applies is impatience. When I was building e-learning back in the 90s, I remember there was an unwritten rule that you had to engage someone in 20 seconds. You know, you've got to capture their attention in 20 seconds, otherwise they lose interest. 3 seconds. What percentage of internet users will abandon a website if it doesn't load in 3 seconds? 20%? Almost 50%. I mean, how impatient are people nowadays? It's just incredible. I mean, and again, these things have to respond. You know, these mobile experiences have to be there instantly. They have to be slick. They have to be fast. So how hard is it? How hard is it to create a great experience on a mobile device? Well, we choose our favourite authoring tool and just hit include HTML5. Job done. Well, almost. Rollovers. Oh yeah, they're not going to really work, are they? So we'll just ignore those for now. Well, we need to make it a little bit smaller as well, because obviously resolutions are a bit different. So we'll scale the thing down. But now that we've scaled it down, the buttons are going to be too small to click on, so we'll make those a little bit bigger. Well, no, obviously that is really not sufficient. There's so much more going on that we need to think about that we're now going to look at in a bit more detail. Behaviours. Google identified 3 behaviours for mobile users, which are really interesting because it really helps us define how we build these experiences. Repetitive now. If we take our typical widget company, this is something which you do again and again. You check something on a daily basis, football scores, the weather, how much are our widgets selling today, and you'll do the same again tomorrow. I'm bored. Well, today I'm just interested in what other people are saying about our widgets, how much other people are charging for their own widgets. I've got a bit of spare time. Or, oh dear, I've forgotten something and I need it in about 10 minutes. 3 different types of the behaviour. So the experience we design needs to cater for one of these, maybe 2, maybe even all 3, based on the needs of the user at that particular time. There's a really good Google survey that's probably worth looking at. Excuse the image. I think the water's distorted his body image a little bit there, so it's a bit unfair. An interesting metaphor as to how people are diving into content nowadays is they're not scuba diving. They're not going down for one particular thing, staying in the same place. They're snorkeling. They're floating on the surface. They're looking for interesting things. They're being distracted by things as well. And they've only got limited air, so they're not going to hang around for too long. So all this is really leaning towards a new rhythm for learning, a new energy that people have got, and loads of distraction going on, as we've seen from the impatience factor that comes out of the research. So how do we engage people? How do we engage this individual to make sure he does stay on what we've designed for him for a sufficient amount of time? How do we help him find what he wants? I think there's a figure in the industry saying in mobile learning you should be no more than 2 clicks and 10 seconds from what you need, which can be quite a challenge, but it's a good parameter to bear in mind. Multitasking, this report from Google is probably a couple of years old now, but it really illustrates another aspect of it, in that people are not on one device, they're surfing. 90% of people use more than one device in one day and continue the same activity on different devices. And this is a sort of indication of the spread of minutes on those devices. And how many people here use more than 3 devices or 3 or more devices in one day? It's getting more and more every time I do that survey. It's significant. How do we cater for that? Different resolutions, different requirements on each of those particular devices. This isn't a talk about technology, but resolution does come into it. This is an interesting one. This organisation studied the resolutions that are out there and realised that if we lived in an Apple world, things would be a lot easier. I think there's only 4 or possibly a few more resolutions. But bring in the Android, and this is what we've got to cater for. How do we deal with that? It's quite incredible, really, but there are solutions. So these are some of the problems we're up against. What about the design? What about the UXD? What can we do? What can we do now? I love that quote. I just love skeuomorphic middlemen. I don't know what they are, but it just sounds great. There's loads of stuff which we can dispense with now that we're using gestures, buttons, menus, folders, tabs, right-click, scroll bars. All the stuff we've been baggaged with for so many years, we can push it to one side, which is a really exciting opportunity. As I say, this talk isn't about technology, but to tick the technology box, every man and dog here seems to be talking about a responsive framework. There are some really great solutions now. So I think we've got this one pretty much sorted. The biggest challenge now is how we design within those frameworks to make things really use the devices to their best. What I'm interested in is this little thing, the thumb. This is what we're up against now, is this little chappy here. The opposable thumb. It's a fantastic thing. It's pretty unique in the animal kingdom. It really distinguishes us from it, allows us to do all sorts of things. And when it comes to mobile design, it is the most important digit. You may think it's your fingers, it's not, it's your thumb. Right, down to detail now. What about the smartphone? Designing for the smartphone based on this. The smartphone's easy because there are only 3 ways of holding it. You can hold it in one hand, you can hold it in 2 hands, or you can hold it in one hand and use the other hand to actually tap on it. How many people hold it in one hand and just use their thumb? Most commonly. 2 hands? So it is a mix. Interestingly, the commonest way to hold an iPhone and the way that most apps are designed is one hand usage, using the thumb. What that means is there's a hot zone on that device, which roughly equates to that blob I've got on the screen. This is the thumb zone. Like I said, this is designing for use in one hand using the thumb. There's a hot zone, obviously depending on which hand you hold it in, that would switch sides, but most commonly probably optimized for the right hand. With that in mind, where do we want to put the stuff that people need to touch most often? Well, primary targets go in that hot zone, sort of middle on that screen. So these are things that people are going to be, as soon as they open that app, that's what they want to select. Is that 2 clicks thing. That's the first click, is right in the center there. Things I don't want people to accidentally touch are out of that space. So if you think of Twitter, if you think all the apps you use on a daily basis, All the stuff which is posting, changing, deleting, it's at the top. It's out of that zone because we don't want them to accidentally hit that. So these are one-click operations generally, but we don't want people to do it by accident. Toolbars can be at the bottom. We don't want to clutter the sides of the screen because that's our primary target area. So things like different operations that we do within the app, we can have them at the bottom. And this is based on research, so this is like an ideal layout. An example of that, a really good example, I think, is Evernote. Primary targets. So when I open this up, I want to open my notebooks. Usually I'm in there, I want to add my notes, I want to read the notes I've just made previously, so they're all here. One thing you'll notice as well, full screen width buttons as well. So it doesn't matter which way around I'm holding it, my thumb can reach it regardless. So that's my hot zone. Things that I don't want people to hit accidentally are at the top. So my settings, my refresh the screen, and notifications, take a picture. I don't want to take a picture accidentally, for goodness sake. They're at the top out of the way. Sharing operations are down the bottom, so I've got add to favourites down the bottom there. Things that are going to give me easy access, but not cluttering the screen. So look at apps like that for ideas as to layout, but that's not fitting the model that I'm describing. Things get more complicated with tablets, because I don't know how many ways there are to hold a tablet. I can think of probably about 35. 2 hands, 1 hand on the desk, propped up, walking around, on the wall, on the loo, who knows? I mean, it's endless. But the most common way to hold a tablet is actually two-handed, to use the thumbs. So the hot zones change slightly. And imagine yourself holding a tablet. That sort of feels like a usable area. It's actually quite difficult to reach the bottom of the screen when you're holding a tablet. If you imagine trying to, unless you've got very strange multi-digited thumbs. Those hot zones work. So things change on tablets in terms of layout. Navigation is best suited to be on the sides. And if you think of some of the apps, I mean, I use Prezi quite a lot. Prezi app for the iPad, you touch the sides to move between content, which is quite nice. And that's where my thumbs are. It's very easy to find. The content navigation is better at the bottom. What you don't want to do is have content navigation towards the top, because to use the device then you've got to actually cover the content to reach it. So you can't see what's changing underneath, which can be quite confusing. So your content navigation should stay along the bottom, ideally. But the mode of use obviously determines this particular layout, and things can change according to how people are actually going to use the device. Good example of that is Flipboard. Look at the size of those tap targets. I mean, they're not enormous. I can navigate, I can almost touch all those hotspots with my thumb. I've got navigation at the bottom. I've got search at the top, which I don't want to hit accidentally, but everything is sort of within that zone, if you like. If we dig into a deeper page, my thumb navigation, I can move between pages at the bottom without covering the content. That's a really easy device to use. Sharing content is here, so that's a one-tap operation, but my thumb can easily reach down and touch that. So things are really keeping to the sides and the top, which are really nicely designed out. So, I attended a talk over there just before this one, and a similar subject came up. This concept of how big do you need to make your tap targets? Well, there is an answer, there is a number. The answer to life, the universe and everything is not 42, no sorry, it was always 44 in my eyes. 44 pixels is the Apple recommendation for the size of a tap target, which is about 7 mils. But what they say is ideally 50 pixels, or about 9 millimeters is the minimum size. Otherwise, people are going to miss them. And if these tap targets are closer together, you should make them even bigger, because there's a greater opportunity of people actually hitting the wrong one. But even bigger than that, I think the gentleman over there said, in terms of thumb, designing for the thumb, tap targets from 72 pixels. And that's actually getting quite chunky, because the thumb, on certain people looking around, is quite a large thing to deal with. So make them as big as you can. Don't limit it by traditionally learning design. This is one thing which really does matter. We need to make things obvious as well. I mean, gestures are fantastic. I mean, pinching, zooming, zooming across the screen, but they need to be obvious. This is one, I'm hopefully going to teach you something you don't know here, though a lot of you probably know this. Google Maps, everyone uses Google Maps. To zoom in, double tap. To zoom out, excuse me, I don't know which round to do, where to do that. 2 fingers, 1 tap on the screen will zoom out on the screen. How many people knew that? It worked, great. Try it. 2 fingers tap on the screen, you'll zoom out to the Google map, but it'll retain the position, you're at the central position. Nobody knows about it, but it's a really nice thing. So these things do need to be obvious, but there's no extra charge for that, so try it. Scrolling. Scrolling is back. Parallax scrolling particularly, and this is where you may have seen some examples of this on some of the responsive frameworks that are now appearing, where there's no page navigation. The whole course is effectively one stream of information going down the page. There are some beautiful examples of this. I've got a couple that I can show you in a moment. There's this organisation is an advertising agency here, and they've been monitoring how people are accepting scrolling on tablets in particular, because it's so much more pleasant to do with your fingers than that horrible grey scroll bar that we used to use in traditional desktop learning. It's so much more easy to just to flow backwards and forwards. Let's see some examples. This is a beautiful bit of, I mean, call it learning, I don't know if it's propaganda, but I think it's trying to encourage kids to go to the moon or something, but it's a single page of content, but it goes on and on. If I scroll down, you notice how the background moves at a different speed to the foreground. Now as this individual dies out of space, I mean, it's just a beautiful use of scrolling. There is an audio track that plays with this, but rather than the audio stopping and starting on different parts of the screen, it fades out and then fades in again. And it's about, I mean, it'll probably take me about half an hour to go through this, but it's a beautiful way of digital storytelling. There's no start and there's no end. There's no page structure as such. But I'm encouraged to scroll up, scroll down, and just keep going for as long as I want to. I mean, let's just dive in here. I mean, the work that's gone into this is beautiful. Obviously quite complex to build this, but the concept, I think, of a scrolling page of information is nothing to be afraid of. Another example here, I don't know if you've seen this on the Guardian site, all about the Snowden sort of data issues. As we scroll down this page, video just plays automatically. And also we get different interactions which start to work as we approach them. So just, again, a wonderful, fresh approach to delivering content. If you actually read this, it's quite scary, actually, what they put on here. And there's some nice interactions further down as well. But I just love the way that starts and stops. You know, I'm not restrained by having to click next and back. I can just freely move up and down. Now, what this all does mean, though, I mean, this is quite a radical departure for instructional designers. You know, without, you know, traditional learning is based on a definite page structure where we break up content into nuggets of learning. This is a lot more freeform, so we mustn't trivialise this as a change and think about how we can re-engage people and make sure that the objectives are met if we use some of these ideas. Some processes then. So we see some examples, but what about the hard bit, actually defining content, defining the audiences for mobile learning based on creating a great experience? There's just a couple of ideas which we use, which I'd like to sort of share with you. The analysis stage, I mean, the traditional approach is to do a traditional ADDIE approach of defining learning objects, etc., etc. Something which does come from user experience design is use cases. It's a lot more energetic, it's a lot more engaging in terms of analysing an audience. What you do is you actually follow people around. I mean, mobile learning, to actually define mobile learning, you've got to be mobile. You've got to follow someone around the business, see what information they need at any particular time, see what their needs are, how quickly do they need it, who do they talk to after they've taken in that information. I've just got two use cases that we've created recently for one of our customers here, just to show you the sorts of things that you can ask and the sorts of feedback that you can get back to help you define solutions. Typical questions you ask are, what do they do? What's their mindset? Why are they coming to this particular piece of learning? What do they want to take away? Technology considerations. What devices will they use in the organisation, outside the organisation? Because they could differ. Triggers. How will they receive notification of this piece of learning arriving? Is it email? Is it a code? Is it word of mouth? What needs to be in place before they take it? Is there anything that the app needs to know about them? Does it need to remember where they were last time? Well, it does in this case. What needs to happen afterwards? What would they do? How would they normally go through this information? What's their normal path? And is there a different path? Maybe they have a different need at a set time. What would that be? And how long would they typically spend using it? Really good questions, and you get some really quite interesting answers. This was, for this particular app, this was a HR manager who wanted to find things very quickly and share very quickly. The second case was a business owner with slightly different requirements, interested in corporate social responsibility, but they need a bit more buy-in to help them make a decision. So also sharing, but I need a bit more knowledge before I do that. So video case studies is what we chose for this individual. For the previous individual, ease of sharing to as many places and as many people as possible. So this is combining those use cases into one design case, if you like, that we could take forward and build the app from it. Works extremely well. The second idea is, it's a complex area of design. Designing for mobile is complex, it's technical, all the reasons that we've been through. A really nice way to actually start defining content is actually just to sit down with some paper. Forget about the technology, it doesn't matter, it shouldn't matter. Smashing Magazine is a great resource for user experience design, and they've got these wonderful free templates for different devices. And it's a really creative exercise to sit with pen and paper and actually just map out how these screens are going to look, with no constraints of technology, what system am I going to build it in. It shouldn't matter at this stage, it's a brainstorming activity. Particularly if it's one of your early ventures into mobile, it's great for getting buy-in, because you can invite everybody into that discussion. So get your stakeholders involved, the designers, but the learners as well. Give them a sheet of paper. What do you want this to look like? Bend the paper, shake it. Just iterate through designs. Think about the activities which absolutely have to be supported by this particular intervention. There was a great piece of research done by John Carroll back in the 90s, which he came up with the phrase of, what's the least amount I can tell you? He was a very early proponent of performance support. What's the least amount of information that I need to tell you for you to go and do your job well? And that's a great place to start. In terms of the process, get everyone to sketch something for a few minutes, then discuss it one-to-one, consolidate that activity maybe in a further 20 minutes, but then present back to the group. And you're going to get a distillation of all sorts of different ideas to address this quite complex and new concept of designing things for devices, because everyone's going to have different needs and different ideas that they can bring into the fold. It's great, it's fun, it's really a fun thing to do. I mean, some people just can't draw, but that makes it even funnier, so do it. And really finally, it's about looking around as well. So we've just got 3 takeaways, if you like, to encourage you to sort of open your eyes up and explore what's around there already. Use what you know. I mean, what I've described here, some of the technology is quite complex, it can be quite expensive. Just to show you one example of the course we built for a customer recently, we built it in Storyline, good old Storyline. I've got it sitting in the background here. I mean, it runs on the iPad, and it's not particularly responsive, it's not gesture driven, but it's optimized for iPad. I mean, we try to think about navigation along the bottom, so it's a perpetual navigation that doesn't disappear, which is more pleasant for mobile users. You know, I can just use my thumbs to quickly skim across. We've even come up with notifications as well, so it's sort of got an iPhone feel to it, as in there are 6 items in there which you have to visit to have this marked as complete. There's a lot more information, but it's optional. It's given me a bit of choice really what I actually do. Great big panels to click on. I mean, look at the size of these things. I mean, that's about 200 pixels, I think. So it's Storyline, but it's optimized for mobile. So we've gone part way there, if you like. So there's lots you can do with the skills you've got already. The next one really is, what apps do you use already? I mean, I like to know the weather quite often end up in the Peak District soaking wet. I like to know how wet I'm going to get and if I'm going to die of freezing, of cold. What do you need to know? What are you interested in when you open a weather app? You need to know how sunny is it going to be, how cold is it going to be. There's loads more hidden behind. I mean, there's the pollen count, there's the UV rating, there's the wind strength, there's probably plenty of other material, but it's hidden away. I can get to it quite easily by going down the sides here, but there's my need to know stuff. The minimum amount I need to know is presented to me immediately without any complications. Look at the apps you use every single day, and there's loads to learn from these because they're optimized for a particular need. Games, who plays games? I don't. But I love them because they are great examples of user experience design. They do it extremely well. I mean, they're monetarized, they make millions out of it because they use great user experience design. You don't need any help when you play a game. You're straight in there, you know what to do. The game fills the screen. There's no navigation generally, or it's hidden away, but you know where to get to it. The content fills the screen. If there is help, it's often based on levels. So you don't need to know everything when you start the game, but as you get through it, help can be incrementally introduced, which increases your sort of satisfaction in getting to know the depth of the content. Play games, or if you don't play games, just download them temporarily. Just have a look at how they've been put together. Think about the user experience and why it works, what makes it engaging. Takeaway message, really. I mean, yes, we're all obsessed with mobile, but sometimes it's not the answer. So keep it real. Thank you very much. I hope that's been useful. There's some references there. There's a link to my talk. If you want to know any more, we have a stand just over there. Thank you very much.